The Accidental Wizard, Part 4. 1st of December. I am at my worst when I feel someone is hiding something from me because it always means they're going to abandon me and they don't want to tell me that. Then I look into them and I know and wish I didn't. I miss my mum so much. She would never ever lie to me. I knew what she said was the truth and sometimes it hurt to hear it, but it was the truth. My wife is the loveliest person I've ever met. She said she would get a gun and shoot me if I was ever unfaithful, which I paid attention to, but that part was easy anyway, as she was all I needed. She gave me everything, and I wanted for nothing, but that has changed so subtly I haven't even noticed. I trust her so much I have no need to look into her. 11th of December. A business trip to Kosovo. I've wanted to visit this tiny country ever since it was dragged into the world headlines in 1995 in the Bosnian War. It wasn't even a country in its own right then, and has only just been recognised as such by the UN. I sense this is going to be more than just a business trip. My partners, Ian King, an ex-army helicopter pilot, and Avni Estrefi, who is Kosovan, are with me. As soon as we touch down, I can feel the history of the place. Forces have washed over it, to and fro, many times. Curious trapped souls are checking me out as much as I am them. I'm walking through Mitrovica, Avni's hometown, as he describes how the Serbs sealed up the school he went to and gassed everyone inside. Around 1,000 children and teachers died. We walk onto the bridge over the river which divides the Kosovan and Serb-populated parts of the town. The Serbs are still in residence 10 years on from the war. I take a picture, and there are faint orbs in the foreground on the bridge. A French K4 guard asks us to leave the bridge. He's worried we might be picked off by a Serb sniper, who very occasionally take pot shots at the Kosovans on the opposite riverbank. 2 children playing there a couple of years earlier were shot. We leave. Avni shows me a memorial statue of the leader of the Kosovan Liberation Army. He led the Kosovan resistance against the invading Serbs as they came through the mountain pass behind Mitrovica. He was killed in hand-to-hand combat against the Serbs, who were supported by tanks. He had 27 bullets in his body when he died. He was Avni's elder brother. Kosovans are the most extraordinary people, resourceful, industrious, totally trustworthy. Avni is no exception to this. He's very handsome, quietly spoken. He's always quick to smile and laugh. He has a hug like a car compactor, and I've banned him from hugging me as he always puts my neck out. High fives work fine for me. He has a right fist like a hammer when necessary, but is the most artful pourer of oil on troubled waters. Why he isn't Kosovo's ambassador to the UN is beyond me. His brothers, Sami and Bedri, work in government already, so it's probably only a matter of time. If my family lived there, and they were ever threatened, Avni would be my go-to guy. He takes a picture of me in front of the statue of his brother, and it's awash with orbs. I can feel the spirits around me as I pose for the picture. There's even a strange sort of ectoplasm above my head. This land has many spirits still walking the ground where they fell. We go for a haircut and a shave with the old boys who work in the barber shop in the centre of Mitrovica. They are hilarious and treat us like visiting royalty. As Ian and I are strolling round the market, I take a few quick tourist snaps of the stalls. As we look at the pictures, we can both see that one has a blue hexagonal orb in the centre as well as some other blurs and blobs. Later, we learn we were standing 50 feet from a mosque where the locals were rounded up. The men and children were shot and the women raped before also being shot. The hexagonal orb is to appear in my pictures repeatedly across the world, My sense is it's a combination of the presence of Michael and Uriel watching over me, and other sensitives will echo my feeling. The hexagonal shape is interesting. Diana Cooper and Klaus Heinemann, I'll explain more who they both are in a bit, say they think they appear as hexagonal because the angel is radiating energy instead of resting. My sceptical colleagues dismiss it as the effect of the shutter, which on a single lens reflex camera is still sometimes mechanical and is hexagonal when almost closed. But that doesn't apply to a compact digital camera like mine, which is electronic. It's either on or off. I'll show this picture to Stephen Fry I'll read that one again. I'll show this picture to Stephen Fry a few years later over dinner. Stephen is a brilliant mind and hugely well informed, but seems to really loathe, what he sees as conjecture. He becomes incensed with my premise and keeps saying he wasn't there when the photograph, or any of the others I show him, was taken. So how can he possibly comment? We've jumped forward in time now about 5 years. I can't recall inviting him to comment. I just wanted to show him and pique his interest. I thought he would make the perfect host for my TV series on the subject. His angry reaction really surprises me, as I have him pegged as an open-minded, well-travelled and inquiring soul. That dinner doesn't end well, and I feel my healing self reaching out to him. I know the exorcist who was asked by the couple who bought Stephen Fry's recently sold flat, you have to concentrate here, to exorcise it, as they didn't like the atmosphere and were subject to all sorts of carrying on. What I would like to know is whether or not Stephen had felt it too, and how he reacted if he did. Stephen and Richard Dawkins would make for an interesting dinner, wouldn't they? They'd be queuing up to drive in the nails and start the fire around my feet. That must be how the Spanish Inquisition started. January 21st. Should I take the A303 or the M4 to Glastonbury? Last time I was there, I was working in Bristol on DIY SOS with Nick Knowles, and I dragged the long-suffering production manager there for a visit. It was pleasant, but I didn't really get it. I knew I should be there, but I had zero idea why. The only reason was my mum had suggested I go, as it was my special place. Well, she got that right. So here I am again, driving down to Glastonbury. Somerset and the surrounding area are like nowhere else in the country. They have a particular atmosphere, spacey, but nice. Glastonbury is a magnet for every nutter imaginable. The deluded, eccentric, gifted, unhappy, and lost turn up here, and I suppose you could suggest that includes me. I've brought my camera, and I'm going to conduct an experiment. I've booked into the George and Pilgrims, the oldest hotel in the area, if not the country. It's so old, Henry VIII stayed there when he popped in to personally hang the last remaining Anglican abbot, Colin Whiting, in 1538 on the tour, or so the story goes. Henry had done a deal with the Roman Catholic Church to convert England to Catholicism and dissolve the monasteries around the country. It was called the Reformation, which was a posh way of saying land grab. It involved torturing confessions from the unfortunate monks and nuns that they were in the employ of the devil before being put to death. Torture, which was carried out in this hotel. Some things never change, do they? Henry had 2 big black dogs who were witness to the hanging of the abbot on the tour, and I'm staying in a room named after another church leader, Abbot Selwood. A little voice in my head has suggested I might like to stay up and take some pictures to see if I can capture some orbs to prove their existence to myself. I quickly clean the lens after each shot to remove the chance of a piece of dust being stuck to the lens. An old hotel in a town like Glastonbury has got to be rich pickings for orbs, hasn't it? Right, well, this is pretty interesting. Astonishing, even. When I check into the room, It's empty, obviously, but alive with curious souls and energies. I turn in for bed, but sleep proves impossible. I'm being looked at. I take some pictures. An empty room, albeit a quaint and interesting one. I turn off the light. I still feel like I'm being stared at. I ask the assembled group if they'd like to show themselves instead of just staring. Bloody Nora. Blobs everywhere, flying in formation all over my pictures. This is the first for me. I am consciously taking all pictures, on purpose. Dozens of them. They come and go. I wipe the lens again, and one particularly big one, which looks like a gravy stain, won't go, and it stays in the same position on the lens. I wipe, try different focal depths, but I can't shake it off. Then I forget to wipe the lens, and it goes immediately. So that's its way of telling me not to be stupid or doubt they can make themselves visible. But I'm going to need to show this to physicists, photographers, camera technicians. Oh yes, I want a second and third opinion. But to my mind, as the person sitting up in the room, sweating nervously, this is incontrovertible. Before I left home, I tried some controls, what we scientists refer to as establishing controls on experiments. I photographed rain, dust from the vacuum bag blown into the air. I photographed in mirror bathrooms. Nothing. Same camera, done during the week before. Nada. The rain looked like rain, the dust like dust, and the bathroom just reflected the flash. But tonight it's like the Blackpool illuminations. This will infuriate a lot of people who will not accept the existence of orbs and angels and spirit guides or an intelligence other than our own. What tough shit, pal. I'm starting a collection which will eventually run into thousands, and there are hundreds of other people who are having the same experience. But as an aside, I suppose it's like cognitive dissonance. You show something to somebody who it challenges their belief system or their lack of belief system, and they just can't deal with it. So their natural reaction is to strike out because it confuses them and unsettles them. I've seen this happen so many times now. Even when skeptics can see the orb, they insist on disregarding this phenomenon as a fault or dust, you see. Funnily enough, every time I ask a skeptic for an example of dust on their shots to illustrate their point, they can't supply me with even one example. And that's because they don't take pictures like I do. Their minds are closed, and the angels can't see you clearly when your light is off, so they don't get any, which is the point, isn't it? Come on, let's evolve as a species a little. Or maybe that should be rewind to the point where the light went out. 22nd of January. I go up on the tour the next day to give thanks, mainly for the amazing visitation, and I'm greeted by two big black dogs like the ones Henry VIII was supposed to have had. Well, that's a bit strange. They remind me of the orbs of protection in Yosemite. I didn't know this, but guess which saint the tour is officially dedicated to? Yep, Michael, the protector. I love being near the tour, and it seems to love me back. I leave very happy indeed. 12th of February. I have Klaus Heinemann, an experimental physicist, late of Stanford University, to thank for today's diary entry. Heinemann wrote a book called The Orb Project, where he applied his considerable quantum physics knowledge to the question of why this phenomenon is becoming so prevalent. He cites luminosity and the construction of modern digital compact cameras as contributory factors. First, luminosity. You can have a bit of science here. When a neon tube is charged with an electrical current, it excites the molecules of the gas in the tube and they radiate light because they change energy to light. It's the same reason the northern lights glow with that amazing eerie radiance near the poles. Solar energy charged particles, not quite the same as the electricity in the neon tube, but charged particles nonetheless, bombard the atmosphere, and it makes the gases in the upper atmosphere glow as energy is converted to light. Radio waves are also a form of light. And if the visible spectrum was a keyboard, a standard-sized piano keyboard, the light we can see would take up the length of a keyboard. The frequencies we can't see with the naked eye would reach all the way to the sun. Do you get that? If the visible spectrum was a keyboard, the light we could see would take up the length of a keyboard, and the frequencies we can't see with the naked eye would reach all the way to the sun. Isn't that mind-blowing? Even a Scotsman called John Tyndall used visible luminosity for the world's first global warming demo in the 19th century, when he showed how carbon dioxide traps heat. Heinemann's theory is when we use a flash or sunlight. Heinemann's theory is when we use a flash or the sunlight is particularly strong, the orbs are able to appear in the visible spectrum for a split second, and this is when the camera shutter is open. The light charges their molecules, or whatever they're made of, no one's been able to study their physical properties yet, and they radiate the energy back as light. The other key factor is compact cameras are fitted with an infrared light intensifier to improve low light sharpness and reduce picture noise or grain. Well, this accidentally helps record orbs as they are on the longer light wave end of the spectrum, i.e. the red end, where infrared radiation resides. You can capture them on infrared video cameras with ease. I wonder who was at work in the background helping with the development of the compact camera and infrared photography. How much subtle help do you think we receive from God's angels and elders? And while we're on the subject of having divine help, why did the human genome inexplicably suddenly accelerate in a straight line of determined evolution like no other species about 140,000 years ago? Because it did. Weird. Okay, science lesson over. I'm lying in bed back at home and I can't sleep. Right now I am so excited. My life just changed for good. I can feel it. There's no going back. I am a fully paid up photographer of orbs. I can't believe the pictures. My wife just smiled and said something like, "Nice." Huh? Surely this proves there's some sort of presence apart from ours. This is a deal breaker. This is a really, really big story. The angels do exist. We're not alone. That something is looking after us. That I will never be abandoned again. That precious mythology which has been buried under a smug landslide of science is in fact real. Who's been trying so hard to bury it? Not the team who were kicked out of heaven by Michael, Sandalphon and Enoch, surely. I'm talking about the devil's posse, the fallen angels. Is science their revenge on us for discarding them? Was science invented to bury who we really are? I believe in evolution. How can you possibly not? But we seem less enlightened than we were 200 years ago. I have mixed feelings. I'm fascinated by science and I love it, but maybe it's the work of the devil. Sorry, Richard Dawkins, this will infuriate you. I sound like a wizard old crone from Macbeth, don't I? But science totally runs our lives now. And what if a massive solar storm in the future wipes out comms, power, GPS, computers and power stations, which it will? It's happened on a smaller scale quite often. A really big belch of cosmic rays from the sun, like the one 14,000 years ago, could bring the planet to a halt, wipe out a lot of life. 14th of February. I've just read some of Diana Cooper's books on orbs and unicorns. I feel I know her from somewhere. I want to have contact with her, so I've written Diana an email to compare notes. Astonishingly, this revered author and public speaker is on the phone. She wants to meet. She feels we are both from the same planet, literally. Sirius B, in our case. One more crazy sounding theory to add to the pile. But how exciting is that? And why me? I know she gets thousands of emails. But I was thinking, if you knew nothing about yourself, if you had a nasty bout of amnesia, you'd want to piece it all together, wouldn't you? And I'm starting to give huge, very generous clumps of information to myself from somewhere. Somebody wants me to wake up and tell others these new facts of life. Part of the new order. I'm becoming increasingly aware of a sort of mental padlock on my third eye, in my forehead. I'm receiving information which I can't decode. I certainly can't understand much of what I'm discovering or being told. There are things which resonate immediately, and other information which is already there, and I know, but I feel as if I'm somehow absorbing far more than I realise, and it's being stored. 16th of February. I am driving through the gates of Diana Cooper's property. It's called Kumika House, after a spiritual deity called Lord Kumika. He is Diana's guide, and, she claims, the source of inspiration for some of her books. Well, this should be an interesting meeting. Diana is a world-famous source of inspiration for believers in orbs, angels, spirits, pixies, elves, unicorns, Esaks, and all manner of wonderful things in heaven and earth. She comes out to meet me and is just as lovely as she is in her books. But boy, I thought I was harbouring some outlandish ideas. Diana is a very, very advanced being indeed. I look into her eyes and feel only sincerity there and conviction. She's just the kindest person you could ever hope to meet. She says she felt immediately with me that I was an Atlantean like her, and that our souls had both originated from other planets. She does look very familiar somehow, I'll give her that. My sense is that what she's telling me is absolutely true, absolutely spot on. Again, sorry Richard Dawkins, I don't know why, he just plays on my conscience, that guy. I've nothing to base it on apart from my gut feelings and the feeling there are a group of angels around us nodding happily. And do you know what? It is so liberating. I choose to believe, to feel comfortable with the extraordinary. I don't want to put her on the spot, cross-examine her, shoot her down in flames. I want to bathe in the positive, to have hope, to believe there's something better. Try this. Spend a day questioning everything you hear or read. Have a news channel on all day. Question the point of your own existence. Question your relationships, your future. Then see how unhappy and discontent you feel. That's a typical day for lots of us, including me. Then try this. Spend a day where you don't read a newspaper or listen to the news. Don't question everything. Just allow yourself the luxury of believing in good. Give yourself a hug and congratulate yourself on being an amazing thing. Tell yourself you like you. I didn't do this until my wife suggested it when I was 50 years old. I sat for half an hour with my jaw dangling around while it sunk in. It's why the bad guys have the planet in their thrall at the moment. We're in the grip of negativity, fear, and hatred so much that we've forgotten to love ourselves, and that has to change. Diana, with her fascinating ideas and unique talents, is a lovely example of the power of the positive. She is an angel like my mum and Angela. It's so easy to dismiss and ridicule the simple truth incarnated angels offer you. All you need to do is take it to your heart, and that takes a courage these days which shouldn't be necessary, but it is. I confess I'm crying right now. This is such a beautiful truth. I cry a lot, I can't help it. But I've started to do it more, and I feel things more and more powerfully. We're not alone. I was worried that we might be out here in the frozen, silent vacuum of space alone. But love is a universal, powerful truth. Oh, I feel a tree hugging coming on. Give yourself permission to have a little cry. Think about what that feels like. Hug whoever's nearest, right now. Even if he's selling the big issue or smells of urine, he needs it as much as you do. More. This is the effect Diana has, and that has to be a good thing. Why do we instinctively want to make an example of the pure of heart and kill them, burn them, nail them to a cross, torture them to confess them abomination? Because we're frightened of the transcendental power of love, that's why. Women seem to have it in greater quantities than men, probably why men portray women as evil temptresses like Eve, Lilith, Jezebel, and Mary Magdalene. Men still try to control women. I'm unhappy about this fact. My soul is the Shekinah, the divine feminine. (28th of February). My monthly mediumship development sessions with Angela are going from strength to strength. She is a marvellous, funny teacher. If I'm honest, it's a multi-mum love fest for me. There's a range of ages in her classes and abilities amongst the people who attend regularly, but it's comforting to be amongst others who are like me and remind me to varying degrees of my own mum. I'm still missing her terribly. You shouldn't underestimate how debilitating loss is. I feel her loss every day. To my surprise, I expected her to feel near, but I don't. It's as if she's gone a very long way away. Maybe back to Sirius. Look, while you're giggling about this idea, consider the fact that we've only discovered Chiron recently. A whole planet skulking around on the fringes of our own solar system. We've had telescopes for 200 years, but it took a really sensitive one to spot it. It's been there the whole time, but we only just found it. Which doesn't mean it wasn't there before. You see how we instinctively trust science. If scientists tell us something, or a man in a suit, it must be true. They've told us Chiron exists, so we believe them. Have you ever seen it yourself? We have become believers in the Church of Science. Maybe that's why the West is experiencing a slow decline into atheism, while the Middle East and Africa is increasing the conviction of its beliefs and its embrace of Islam. Same God, vastly different theology and hence motivation. Something very odd happened in the class today. I have dreamt in a funny language occasionally since I was little, and today when we were sitting in a circle taking in turns to try inspirational speaking, I could feel a small group of beings standing behind me. One of them stepped forward and sits into me, which is bloody odd, I can tell you. I sort of mentally step aside and watch from a few feet away. My arms are rising up in the air. I must look ridiculous. Then Angela's addressing me and I realise time has passed. She's saying I was speaking in a different language and I'd brought too many spirits forward at once. I'm shocked, and to my acute embarrassment, I start crying again. This is a rather frightening loss of control, but at the same time it's exciting. Something is in my knowing which wasn't there before. I'm an ancient being, a shaman. I can conjure these powerful guides forward when I need their help, or there's a job to be done, like the walls of Babylon being blown down, or a path through a sea created by a dragon. The lady who'd been sitting next to me, who happens to be a wonderful opera singer, despite the fact she's almost totally deaf, says she thought what I was speaking sounded like Aramaic, which she studied, the language of the Israelites in Egypt, the language of Jesus. Well, and before you say anything, she has got really good hearing aids. 1st of March. I'm becoming increasingly interested in shamanism. Every culture has its witch doctors, medicine men, healers, oracles, call them what you like. But as with the commonality of the figure who ferries souls across the divide between life and death is called either Hades, Osiris, or Enoch / Metatron, depending on your origins, it's the same box of oranges. I really feel I am something like that. My experiences keep pointing me back to 3 or 4 really powerful, vivid spirit guides who are around me. The North American Indian seems to have faded slightly, but now I have a Mongolian spirit, another who is dressed in beautiful feathers and turquoise, and who is an Aztec or Maya, and a druid connected to Glastonbury. They've shown themselves to help me with my development as a shaman myself, and to protect me against what's coming, whatever that is. Angela keeps talking about my relationship with the Ark of the Covenant, and a group of protective spirits who she says remind her of Darth Vader. Tiny men with black helmets and black armour made from bamboo and leather. Mini samurai. It's all very disconnected, and makes little sense to me as yet. But that is the pattern I'm discovering. It always seems obscure till a certain moment when it snaps into stark relief and becomes clear. It's probably because we are just not good enough yet at interpreting the messages and information we're given. The concept of communing with the spirits of ancestors is the basis of belief across Asia from China to Papua New Guinea. Angela says I should visit Glastonbury again and think about finding myself a suitable staff or stick to go with this new aura of a shaman I've started to project.